To the second of what hopefully will be a series of talks on Shovavim, and today we're going to focus more on the technicalities of the importance of the area that everyone wants to be careful and duration of Shovavim, which is Shemirat Enayim, the main challenge of the area of Shovavim. And Tikkun HaBrit, the Pigam HaBrit, really starts with watching what you see. Really being careful in the area of Shemirat Enayim is really the main challenge. Today's shiur has been dedicated for Refuah Shlema Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid that should have Refuah Shlema. Amen. So I want to just share with you a pasuk in the Chumash, which is very interesting, and the story from the Chafetz Chaim. Pasuk in Chumash says, "Ki Hashem Elokecha mitalech bekerev machanecha." Hashem walks throughout your encampment, la'atzilcha v'lated oivecha lefanecha, to save you, to put your enemies in front of you, to deliver them to your hands. Ve'haya machanecha kadosh, and your encampment should be holy, should be kadosh. Ve'lo yir'eh becha ervat davar ve'shav ma'acharecha. And Hashem shouldn't see ervat davar, nakedness, what we call pritzut. Should not see anything improper in your camp, because if he does, ve'shav ma'acharecha, he's going to return and turn around and leave you. You want protection. You want your enemies to be delivered to your hands, which is very much on everyone's mind in these weeks. Shemirat Enayim, says the pasuk in the Torah. That's really the source. That is the solution. The Chafetz Chaim was considered the Zkan HaHora'ah. He was considered in European Jewry the one and only one that everybody listened to. Now, recently a footage came out, a real footage from the Chafetz Chaim, the picture that they had from him. Nobody really knew, it's a drawing, nobody really knew if it is the Chafetz Chaim, if it's not the Chafetz Chaim. My Yeshua Zatzal went to Radin to see the Chafetz Chaim. He actually did see him, and had experience with him. They asked him if this is Chafetz Chaim or not. He said, "Oh, it looks like Chafetz Chaim." But now, recently, a few years ago, there's actually a very short video that probably most of you have seen, actual video footage from the Chafetz Chaim walking with his entourage into a place. Now, this is the first Agudat Harabarim, Agudat Yisrael, the first gathering that they had. This is where Chafetz Chaim was entering the Agudat Yisrael gathering, and there's a background to this, because when Agudat Yisrael started, the name of it, Aguda, is to bring all of the segments of Klal Yisrael together. The Hasidim, what used to be called the Mitnagdim, the Lithuanians and the Polish, and all of them coming together. And that's not an easy task, because especially back in the day, they had some very sharp arguments together. So it wasn't pashut. So one of the things that stood out was they wanted the women that are very connected and very much involved with the community also to be there. So it was a question of mechitza. Where it's not a shul, but it's a gathering. So it should be a mechitza. Now the Ezrat Nashim was supposed to be in the second floor, and there was a halachic thing that they had. The Hasidim wanted to have a legitimate mechitza going up all the way, even though that this was in the second floor, and the Lithuanian yeshiva world, they were like, you already have it there, and it's going to have a mechitza. Why does the mechitza have to go to the ceiling? Can't see anything anyways. And the Hasidim were Hasidim, Baruch Hashem. They were strong about this, so they couldn't reconcile it. They say, you know what? We go to Chafetz Chaim. Whatever Chafetz Chaim says, that's what we're going to go with. Chafetz Chaim was accepted, was considered the elder of the generation, the posek, the author of Mishnah Berurah. So he said, whatever Chafetz Chaim says, both we agree. Now, this halachically stays still a dilemma. Rav Moshe Feinstein wrote at least two major tshuvot on this. It's really printed mainly in Igrot Moshe Chelek Aleph in Orach Chaim. Siman Lametet and Mem Aleph. Lametet is really the main one, versus the Satmarov, Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum. They also, in the first line, is Eben Haezer Tshuvot, he discusses this at length, and he is way more stringent than what Rav Moshe Feinstein is, and so on. This is something of contentment that has been and will be there in Klal Yisrael. So he went to Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim hears both sides, and he tells them this pasuk that we just started with. He says, well, the pasuk says, "Hashochen itam betoch tumotam." HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. He says, even if you do averot, I still will not leave. I'll stay with you regardless of what you do. Regardless of what you do, I'm still staying. You do avodah zarah, I'll stick around. You do shfichut damim, you do idol worship, you do murder, I'll still stick around. Stealing, gezel, Chazal says the avon that is mekatrek berosh, it's the first one that always jumps up and gets you into trouble. Still I will stick around. But said the Chafetz Chaim to this Rabbanim, said there is one Avera, one area that you do that, Hashem says, you do this, I drop the whole thing and I leave. And that's the area of tzniut. It's the area of Shemirat Enayim. Hashem says, Lo yir'eh becha ervat davar. Should not see ervat davar. If he sees ervat davar, he's out, he's done, he's gone. You lose your protection, you lose everything. You lose the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem says, your relationship with me depends on this. You have this, I'm in. You don't have it, I'm out. It's as clear as you want in the Chumash. V'lo yireh becha ervat davar v'shav ma'acharecha. So Chafetz Chaim says, even though halachically the Lithuanians are probably correct and more, but for such an important topic, especially when there is a strife and when there is a machloket, will be mahmir, because it adds kedusha to Am Yisrael. It's a tremendous, tremendous area of kedusha. Like Rashi says in the beginning, opening of Parashat Kedoshim, says, Kedoshim tiyu, be holy. You know what holy means? Right, Rashi, Perushim tiyu min ha'arayot. Separate yourself far away from the areas of promiscuity and lack of tzniut, lack of modesty. Why? Shekol makom she'ata motze kedusha. Any place that you find holiness, ata motze geder erva. You find boundaries made from erva, from arayot, from promiscuity, from lack of tzniut. It's important, again, could go on, taking time, discussing the importance of this. I'll give you one more example. Like a blatant, powerful example. The Gemara says, in Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Nuzayin Amud Bet, the Gemara says on page 57, B of Masechet Baba Batra, that when you have Nashim Ha'omdot ala Kvisa, if you have a path, you want to get from point A to point B, and the path that you have to take from point A to point B involves passing by a river. And back in the day when they didn't have washing machines and dryers and so on, it was a whole day job to schlep your dirty laundry to the river, sit there by the river, by the bed of the river, and clean it, wash it, dry it, shake it off the water, and take it back home. Now, this process will involve women needing to roll up the bottom area of their skirts, where the area of shok would be revealed. That shok is, according to 99% of the poskim, is from the area from ankle to the knee. Unlike what the Mishnah Berurah writes, again, this is a deep and wide discussion by itself. The Mishnah Berurah writes this in the name of the Chayei Adam and Pri Megadim, Safek of Pri Megadim, in Siman Ayin Hey of Shulchan Aruch. But the halakha would be that area from the knee until the ankle is shook. That's considered erva. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be opaque and not see through, and not has to be covered. And they would have to roll it up because they're sitting at the beginning of the river, and they don't want to get wet. So that's a kind of like a lack of tzniut over there. So the Gemara says if you pass there, Ve'ika darka acharini. I'm saying the maskana of the Gemara, and I'm learning this like the Rashbam on the Gemara that I there on the Daf. The Rambam may be a little different for all intellectual honesty purposes. But the Rashbam writes in the Gemara that if you have another way, another path to choose, and yet you go in this path, exposing yourself to a nisayon, to a challenge, to a test of tzniut, says the Gemara says you're called Rasha, Nikra Rasha. This person is called a Rasha, which is a pretty strong comment. Now the Rashbam makes it even worse. The Rashbam writes, Nikra Rasha regardless of what happens to you. That means even if you went like this, and you didn't end up seeing anything, but you put yourself deliberately in a test. You could have taken path B, but knowingly that you could have taken an alternative path, you took this path, and you said, I'll be careful, and you were careful. You're still Nikra Rasha. Why? Because why are you putting yourself in a test? Maybe you will stand. Maybe you won't stand. Don't put yourself, Al tevi'eni lide nisayon. Do not bring yourself to nisayon. And that becomes difficult. That shows the power, the importance and the power of this. This is as we discussed last time, it's like a nuclear reactor. It's a nuclear power. You could use it for good and bring the greatest kedusha in this world. And chas v'shalom, if it's used the same nuclear power in wrong hands, if you give it to Hamas, in Machshemam, then you'll have a World War III. You'll have a trouble next to none. So that is the importance of this is due to the fact that you're dealing with the greatest level of Kedusha in the world. The greatest level of Kedusha comes from this area of Chibur, of Zera lebatala versus Zera used properly, wasting seed, not wasting seed. So that area is a very, very potent and very important area. And again, this is a discussion that could go on and on, how important this is. We just brought a few examples. Maybe we'll have more of these examples in the next year, but I want to just discuss, before getting into anything supernatural, Kabbalistic, just very much hands-on, feet on the ground. What does the halakha have to say about this? Is it a chumrah? Is it something that is better to do, but if you don't do it, is okay also? Or is it something that's be'ikar really asur? And is it a rabbinic thing? Is it a biblical thing? So let's learn. We say in Shema every day, V'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei enechem. Now this, according to many Rishonim, is a Isur Deoraita of being careful with a person's eyes, what you see and what you are exposed to. Now, for the beginners, this is also one of the 6 mitzvot midiot. We have 6 constant mitzvot. And the Biur Halacha, the Sefer HaChinuch really counts this, brings it several times. Rav Noach Weinberg wrote the entire thing. The 6 mitzvot midiot. Now, the Biur Halacha, in the very first page of Mishnah Berurah, in the Biur Halacha, in the second Biur Halacha, it brings this in the name of Sefer Chinuch, and he brings the whole language. I will skip through just reading 2 lines of it to you. This is in the foreword, in the preface to Sefer HaChinuch, in Siman Kafei, Chafav, Taf Yud Zayin, Taf Yud Chet, Taf Lamed Bet, Shin Pe Zayin. So what I'm reading to you, I believe, is really in Shin Pe Zayin, the main part that he reads over here. Shesh mitzvot chiyuvan timidi. There are 6 of the mitzvot that are counted out of 613 that are constant, non-stop mitzvot. Non-stop. That means you could be sitting anywhere. You could be laying on your bed. You could be standing in line, and you think of them, and it's counting every second. You're getting a biblical mitzvah. שש מצוות חיוב תמידי, לא ייפסקו מעל האדם אפילו רגע אחד. Even 1 second, they don't stop. כל ימיו, all of your life. וכל זמן וכל רגע שיחשוב בהן, קיים מצוות עשה. Any second that you think of them, you're doing a מצוות עשה. דאורייתא, a biblical positive mitzvah. ואין קץ למתן שכר המצוות. Listen to this. There's no end to how great the schar, the reward of this mitzvot are. Ve'eluhem, and he counts them. And the final, the 6th one is, and I read, Shelo natur achar machshevet alev uriyat enayim. That we should not be drawn after our heart, our thoughts, hirhur, the negative, promiscuous thoughts, negative thoughts, uriyat enayim, and the sight of our eyes. Now, when my grandfather was growing up, he probably read this Mishnah Berurah and said, like what? Well, that's mitzvah timidit. How do you get a constant chance to keep this mitzvah? Probably where he grew up his whole lifetime, he would not be exposed to what we're exposed to here. One drive from home to Bet Knesset, right? Especially if you have to go through certain streets. So says the Mishnah Berurah, he explains, "Acharei levavchem v'acharei enechem, ubichlal zenud hu mishehu rodef achar tavat haolam mibli shechaven bahem kol kavana tova." He says this is a more inclusive thing. It's not just promiscuity. That's the greatest tava of a person, perhaps, but it includes other tavot as well. So that's just to begin with, that this is such a sweet thing that every moment that you have an opportunity, look, not to look. And I say not look. You just got a mitzvah d'oraita right there. Doing nothing. Just doing nothing, you get mitzvot counted for you. And every mitzvah that you do is a biblical mitzvah, one of the shesh mitzvot midiot. But now, let's read what Rabbeinu Yonah has to say on this pasuk that we just read. Writes Rabbeinu Yonah, and this is in 2 places. In Igeret HaTshuvah he writes this, in Od Yudchet. Maran Bet Yosef actually brings this. Maran of Shulchan Aruch, in Sefer Bet Yosef, in Even HaEzer, Siman Chaf Aleph, he brings this Rabbeinu Yonah. Ve'asur le'istakel be'eshet ish min haTorah. It's asur from the Torah to gaze at a married woman. Now, just a parenthesis that's important, gazing and seeing are 2 different things. It's not asur to see. Even talking to a woman, being respectful, to look at them, many Gedolim, many Chachamim did. They bring the name of the Chafetz Chaim that he did. On the other hand, the Chazon Ish and the Stipler and Rab Chaim Alav Shalom, they were recent. They didn't. Many Gedolim did, many Gedolim didn't as a chumrah, but that's not asur. To speak to someone as you saw them, seeing is not asur. Gazing at it, looking with intention, that is gazing, and that would be a isur d'oraita. It's a isur d'oraita. So says the Igeret HaTshuvah, he brings this, by the way, in the Sha'aret Tshuvah also. Rabbeinu Yonah brings this in Sha'aret Tshuvah. Rabbeinu Yonah was a Kidolei HaRishonim. He was a mechutan with the Ramban. Ramban's son Shlomo married Rabbeinu Yonah's daughter. But Rabbeinu Yonah was much older than the Ramban, the Nachmanides. But be that as it may, he says, he's the Haru Bazeh in Sha'aret Tshuvah, in Sha'ar Gimel Otzah Mechdalit, Shelo yistakel adam be'eshet ish u'b'sha'ar arayot pen yukash bahem. So the Hagdara that Rabbeinu Yonah gives, the boundaries for this is, the Torah has prohibited this looking because maybe it will bring you to Michshol. Not that for sure, but the Torah has prohibited because maybe it will. Very much in line with what we just said from the Rashbam in Masechet Baba Batra Naf Nun Zayin, that even though that you didn't end up with a problem, putting yourself in a situation that you may fall by itself is a problem. That's Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah does not say, oh, if your thoughts went off, went crazy, that's when it's asur. No, it's asur, period. Now Rambam seems to write something very similar to this as well. There are 2 Rambams over here. I'll read to you one Rambam at length, a little bit like 3-4 lines, and one of them more short. Rambam writes in Hilchot Tshuva, in Perek Dalet Halacha Aleph and Halacha Dalet, I'll put them together. Rambam writes there are 24 things that stop the process of a person repenting doing tshuva. Right? 24 dvarim makvin et tshuva. From them are 5 things that if you do them, you probably will not do tshuva. Because there are things that people think this is nothing. You do them and you think, what did I do? What do you want from my life, Rabbi? Like, I didn't do anything. And writes the Rambam, and I quote, Hamistakel ba'arayot. A person that gazes at arayot, scenes that you should not, no one should be seeing, things that are considered pritzut. Male al da'ato, he thinks to himself, Shem bekach klum. What? Nothing. What's the problem? Shehu omer, he says in his mind, Chi karafti elea. Did I sleep with her? V'chi karafti etzla. Ve'eno yodea Shemirat Enayim, and he doesn't understand, writes the Rambam. It's a very interesting language of Rambam. He doesn't understand. Shemirat Enayim hu avon gadol. That seeing the sight of the eyes in a negative way, it's avon gadol hu. Shegoremet legufan shel arayot. It causes the actual avera. Shenemar v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. He brings this pasuk that we just mentioned. So Rambam learns that mistakel ba'arayot, it doesn't say old, young, Genesis book of ugly people or not. He doesn't specify. It seems like pretty much in line with what Rabbeinu Yonah says. Now in Sefer mitzvot, maybe he says it a little bit different in the lotus, in the negative mitzvot, mitzvah mem zayin. He writes, he does not say it specifically on his taklut. He writes like this: V'acharei enayim zu zenut. Going after your eyes is promiscuity. Zenut is illicit relations. Kinyan shenemar, like the pasuk says in Shoftim about Shimshon HaGibor, it says, Vayomer Shimshon la'aviv, ota kachli ki yashara be'enai. But then he says, Himashech achar hata'ava gashmit v'itazek ha'machshava ba'en. Here Rambam writes that Shimshon was drawn after his desires and he was thinking about it, right? V'itazek ha'machshava, his mind was busy with it. So here it seems like a regular looking, gazing even, it's not a problem unless your mind starts going, right? So Rambam, it's a little bit unclear, and we'll leave it as that for now because it's not an in-depth analysis class. It's just bringing the basic, these are Rishonim, these are medieval authorities that we live, our halachic literature is based on these people. So you have Rabbeinu Yonah that's pretty clear. You have one Rambam that's also pretty clear that this would be a problem even regardless of a person's thought process. And the majority of the Achronim, they learn that this is a Isur Deoraita, right? Even though that Sefer Yereim, again for intellectual honesty, Sefer Yereim writes in Siman Resh Lamed Gimel that this is a rabbinic thing that has been an asmachta from the Torah. But the majority of the Rishonim and the Poskim, halachic arbiters, they hold that this is a biblical, full-fledged biblical problem. So from them is the Levush, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Pri Megadim, Chayei Adam, Mishnah Berurah, and this goes on and on and on. That's the first one. Out of 4 mitzvot that we're going to discuss. But let's tonight at least get one more done. The Pasuk says, V'nishmarta mikol davara. It's in Devarim, Perek Chav Gimel. V'nishmarta mikol davar ra. And Chazal Dash, it's a Gemara we had recently together in Masechet Avodah Zarah, Daf Chaf. The Gemara says, Shelo yareh adam beyom, yavo li de tum'ah v'layla. Right? In Masechet Avodah Zarah, Daf Chaf Amud Aleph. Now the Smak writes that this is full-fledged Yisur Deoraita. And others write the same the same way. But there are a large list of Rishonim, including the Tosafot right there on the Masechta, That they write this is when a person sees something and starts thinking. Right? There is a draw because she is beautiful, because it is attractive, and the whole, the whole industry of fashion, it's a psychological warfare of understanding the male psyche and what triggers things. If this is revealed, it's revealed like this. And that is exactly what the Tosafot is talking about. If you see something that triggers and you start thinking about it, that becomes already Yarher Bayom. And the Tosafot in Gemara there learn that this is a full-fledged drasha deoraita. That means it's not a asmachta, it's not a rabbinic thing. We're talking about a full transgression of one of the 613 mitzvot of the Torah. And this is something important. Again, I believe one of the areas that causes, one of the things that cause people to have difficulty with Shemirat Enayim is that we really, deep down in our minds, we think, this is Chassidut, it's for the Chacham, for the Rabbi. Rabbi, you should be careful. Don't look, right? But it's a Midat Chassidut. Midat Chassidut is not for all of us. If you look at something as not a big deal, then, well, it's much easier to fall. Versus if you know that this is important, and you could really, really win, that becomes so much easier to be careful. And I want to just end with something. I want to stick to the 30 minutes. One of the biggest things to be successful in Shemirat Enayim is to understand that you could do it. You could do it. It's not out of reach. It's not out of reach. If a person thinks, I can't do it, I surrender, then you will fall. There's no question. The whole Los Angeles is like this. Everybody does it. But if you think that, no, I could do it, this is within my reach, within my capacity, then this strength that generates in a person to tap into their real ability will be enormously more than what you think it will be. I'll give you one research example. Whoever wants the actual article and research on this, I'll send it to you. They did the following in the 50s, I believe it was. They did the following research. Listen to this. They wanted to know how long can a rat stay afloat without drowning. Right? But so put these poor rats in a large container of water, glass container. It's deeper than their height, so they can't stand. They have to swim. The nose is up, the whole body is submerged. And after about, how many seconds do you think? After about 15 seconds, the rats would give up and would drown to their death. Okay? Shlav Aleph. That's the first stage of the research. Then they did the following. When the rat went down, immediately they would pull it out. Meaning it was drowning, done. Pull it down, pull it out. Put it out for 2 minutes. 3 minutes, sit. Tired already, right? 2 or 3 minutes, rest. Then they would dump it back in the water to see what happens. Now, how many seconds do you think the second time the rat survived?
A lot less.
You would say how much? You would say, well, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Honestly, that's what I thought. I thought somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds.
Exactly.
Right?
Over a minute?
More.
How many? 1 minute?
20, 25.
10.
Double mode. It's a hard
60 hours.
What? No.
Why?
That's supernatural.
Why? No, it's not supernatural. Because, and that's the whole point of the research. I'm 99.9% sure that this. Listen. I'm 99% sure more that I have the numbers exactly down. I'll look at it again and I'll send it to you if I want to see it. I have the actual thing. So it says that the part of the research is the following, that because the rat knew in the subconscious that the first time it was saved, so it's not hopeless. It's not hopeless. And it pushes, and it pushes, and it pushes, and its real power is way more than 15 seconds. We have abilities inside us that we don't even know. We don't even know what we have got inside. And if a person really understands how much we're just capable, and the point of the class is not to scare you straight. Well, that too, but it's because it's because when you're scared, you're dealing with a nuclear power. You'll walk carefully. When you know that things depend on this, the Shekhinah being with us as a nation depends on this. The Shekhinah being with you as a person depends on this. What kind of wife and kids you will have depends on this. Our entire mahut depends on this. When a person knows this, then you fight so much harder and so much better. It's a different ball game. And Be'ezrat Hashem, through that, we'll be zocher really to have the presence of Shekhinah with us. Amen. And we'll be saved from our tzarot and our oivim. Amen. Ki yeh ratzon.